Hello everyone, Angelo here, Hollywood filmmaker. I've been very busy. I realize I haven't put up a video in a week. I have been consumed by screenwriting the last week. I've started my new class with Corey Mandel, the second workshop with him. And we have an assignment for the class, so I've been working on it every single day. He asked that we do the assignment like, basically it's a writing exercise, and we're doing all these different kinds of writing exercise to develop certain skills. So it could be developing the skill for, writing with clarity, because a lot of people write convoluted, including myself. It's kind of a mistake everybody makes. Writing for clarity, setting up a conflict clearly, so that along the lines of clarity, keeping the story escalating so people are always interested in what's going to happen, making things harder for the protagonist, or raising the stakes, or writing for authenticity. In this case, we're doing an exercise that has to do with designing a story, and we're like creating lists of stuff that can happen, whatever. Anyways, he says, pick like 2 of these things to write about among this list of stuff that you're creating, and just, do like an exercise with each of them a day. I would do, like, tonight I did 8 of each, so 16 total. Yesterday I did 30 total, and I could have done so much more. I get lazy, I get wrapped up in reading stuff. I'm like, ooh, what's this? Ooh, I want to read about this, or I'll just read, whatever. I get an idea. I'm like, hey, I want to see what Kevin Mitnick's doing. Kevin Mitnick, the former computer hacker who now does security for companies and cybersecurity. He was the world's most wanted hacker. All of a sudden, I got in my head, I'm like, hey, I just want to see what he's doing. And even though I've kept up with him a little over the years, I read one of his books. So I read an article by him. I'm like, oh, this is so interesting. And I'm like, crap, man, I've wasted 45 minutes doing this. But so I'm like, okay, I'll just stay up late tonight. It's like 9:15. I try and be in bed by 8 o'clock, but I'm like, I wanted to keep writing my assignments. I keep hoping every day I'm doing better. Sunday I did 30 of each. Saturday I did like 10. Now Saturday was an interesting day. I met Jim Uhls, the screenwriter of Fight Club. I know he probably wouldn't even want me to make a big deal out of it, because I got to talk to him, and he was very nice, and you get the sense he's just very real, and he's very smart, and he was very friendly with everyone, and I wish I had more to talk about with him. I didn't really have many questions for him, or the questions I would have had, they would have been so in-depth. I didn't want to take his time with that. I did ask him a question. It was at a film festival in Sherman Oaks. Maybe I have been in Sherman Oaks, I don't know, but before, but it was great to be there. Small little festival, and it was really nice to be there, actually, just to be, I miss being at film festivals. Everybody there was so nice, and I just talked to other people around me, and I asked Jim Uhls a question. Actually, I'll tell you what I asked him. It was specifically about, well, it was funny. I told him that, Fight Club made me want to be a director and writer. And I started going on with my question, and he said something like, he's like, yep, like he was going to say thank you, but he couldn't get it out. And I said, oh, well, you're welcome. And I get the sense, oh, he doesn't want to be flattered really so much, or at least it seemed like for me, he didn't want to be flattered so much, even though I ended up doing that more outside. He was like, yeah, okay. Anyway, so I asked him, because I read the screenplay for Fight Club, or a screenplay for it that he wrote. He wrote, I'm sure, multiple drafts, and I've listened to him talk about that in an interview he did online. But it was a version where it was very close, or it was very similar to the movie, but there were a few kind of significant differences, not in the structure of it, but the execution, meaning in the version of the screenplay I found online, Tyler Durden, it's like he has a lot more clear answers for what he wants from Jack, or the narrator, and it's almost like sometimes like the story, it's like they're talking with the same mind. Like the narrator says something, and it's like he says one sentence, and Tyler comes in with the second sentence for the whole, for the thought, and it's like they're saying the same thing. They're very on the same page. And in the movie, Tyler is much more like of a troublemaker and antagonistic and ambiguous. And that's what I said. Well, you know, in the version I read, Tyler kind of finishes the narrator's sentences sometimes, where he kind of knows the answers and he just comes in right with the answers. Whereas in the movie, he's more ambiguous and you don't know where he's coming from, and he kind of challenges the narrator. I said, how did that evolve? And so anyways, that was cool. And he talked a little bit about that. And he talked about like how he came up with one of the scenes where actually like they do kind of go back and, well, where the scene where, and it's very pivotal in the movie, where Marla is kind of trying to relate to the narrator, and the narrator's trying to get through to her, but the narrator obviously doesn't realize who she thinks he is, and then he ends up talking to her and answering her questions and Tyler's questions at the same time while Tyler's in the basement doing construction. Anyway, so he talked about that, and anyway, that was really cool. And I met him outside. I said I was talking to his friend outside, and he's like, "Hey, let me get you to talk over to Jim." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And you know, other people were talking to him. Jim was being so nice, and then me. It's funny. It's like, "Do you have any questions for Jim?" And I said, "Well, no, not really. I just wanted to say hi." The reason I didn't have questions is because so much of what Jim Uhls says, like, I've already studied a lot on, like just about the idea of writer's process, or, you know, how do you have a career and stuff like. And actually, I was watching interviews with Jim Uhls today. He says stuff almost exactly the same, actually exactly the same as Corey Mandel. He just uses slightly different term for it, but he even talks about combining intuitive writing with conceptual writing, but he doesn't call it that. He calls it analytical, and he talks about being able to combine them helped him to write better, and how he avoids writer's block. He refused to believe it, and like it's funny. He seems like a no nonsense guy, and like. But he seems like he's just also, it seems very nice. Again, I'm sure he wouldn't want me praising him like this, but I'm just talking about my experience. I'm not trying to fanboy him. I even told him that. But that's what Corey Mandel talks about, only he doesn't call it analytical. He calls it conceptual side. And Jim Uhls talked about in another interview, like, techniques to just write and develop your screenwriting, and that's what I've been doing for the last 6 weeks, this intuitive writing where you just write without stopping. And it's funny, he even says write 3 screenplays. I wrote 3 screenplays in the last few months. Not that I'm saying that's a magic number, but he says when you're developing your writing, write 3 and don't stop, otherwise you'll keep rewriting for the rest of your life. I'm like, oh, I know what that's like. I was writing 8 drafts of a screenplay, and it still wasn't getting that much better last year that I wrote, and now I know how to, you know, well, not I know the answers, but I now when my class is over, when I have time, I'll go back to it again and really, you know, take the tools I've learned to rewrite it. But I wrote 3 screenplays and then 160 pages of another screenplay that's only about halfway done, I think, because I really love writing it, and it's a story I really want to write. But anyways, it was cool. So I talked to him outside a little, and he was walking to his car, and it's funny. His friend was talking to me for a second, and he's like, "Where's your car?" I said, "It's around the corner." He's like, "Oh, that's where mine is. Come on, walk with us." I was so like. His friend was so cool, but I was kind of embarrassed because I was like, oh, I don't want Jim Uhls to think I'm just trying to follow him to the car. And so I kept saying, I'm like, I'm not being a fanboy. I just, you know, your friend invited me. I'm just walking. But anyways, it was very, and then Jim Uhls, I said, well, okay, they got to his friend's car. I was like, okay, nice meeting you all. And Jim Uhls turned around and he said, keep writing. So that was really cool. So thank you to Jim Uhls for that. And, the other thing I wanted to say, Jim Uhls, I didn't realize this, he offers a screenwriting course online. And it's not a massive one like the ones I'm taking now. They're consuming all my time. I just briefly looked through a little bit of it. It's a video course, which is even cooler. Get to see him talking. It's a bunch of videos. It's called The Screenwriter's Toolkit. If you look it up, I bought it for $12 online. I don't know what kind of discount I was getting, but it said there's a discount. I'm like, is that real, or is that when they say, you know, on TV, supplies are limited, call now and you get the, you know, $13.99 price instead of the retail value of $75 or whatever. So I don't know, but anyways, I was like, well, I've heard him talk. I saw they give generous previews of the video. They give a whole like 17-minute video on there. I saw a little bit of it. I'm like, oh, I want to read this, because he's like no nonsense, it seems like. So, and I know he's had to work hard to develop his writing, but the things he was saying, maybe 2 years ago I would not have understood them. Now I'm like, he's talking exactly like how I'm learning. So I just bought it, in $12, why not? So I just bought it, and I don't have time to go through it now, but I'll check it out at some point. And you have lifetime access to it once you pay the $12. But I don't know if the price goes. It said it was crossed out for $49, which even that would have been, a decent price for that. But anyways, that was really cool. So yeah, check that out. I'll try and link to it in the description if I don't forget. But I've been so busy with writing. Sorry, keep scratching my nose. And I'm staying up late tonight. I'm like, may as well just stay up and do this. So I just haven't had time for much else. I've been trying to eat better, cutting out the kind bars, and just doing more of like limiting when I eat to certain times of day. So it's not exactly like, I'm not being strict about intermittent fasting, as it's called, but basically I'll have dinner. And it's not a big dinner. It's like a strip of salmon I get from the food bank. I don't pay full price for that. A strip of salmon and like some rice or something. And at like 4:30, after I get home from work, because I get into work pretty early, so I'm home by like 4 o'clock. And I don't eat until the next morning. And now I've decided I want to work out first in the morning, then eat breakfast, then eat oatmeal. So that puts breakfast off to like 5:30 in the morning, whereas it used to be around 4:30, 4:45. And I think it's working. I'm losing weight, and it's easier not to snack so much throughout the day. So, and I'm not spending as much money on food. I did spend more money on food, actually, from the grocery store. But I was like, okay, I want to get honey. I want to get raw honey. And what else did I get? That was so expensive. Why was it so expensive? Yeah, I got that pre-cooked frozen rice with mushrooms. Some berries, like blackberries. I don't know. Yeah, I don't remember. Why was it so expensive? I spent like $70 at the grocery store. What the hell did I get that was so expensive? Yogurt, kimchi. Anyways, try and get as much as possible from the food bank. Yeah, I don't know. How did I spend so much? So, I'm trying to lose weight, and like I said, doing like these writing exercises. If we're only expected to do them, Corey Mandel only asks us to do them like, one each day, so 2 a day. I'm doing like between 5 and 15 a day. I could have done even more today, but it's like, okay, I'm getting good exercise, and I'm moving ahead. Like, now that I'm doing this dozens of times in the last week, I moved ahead to, he's given out homework you can do for each day, and it's supposed to gradually ramp up in difficulty, and I skipped ahead to tomorrow's assignment just a little today to see, starting it, like, would it be hard for me. Also, I read Shane Stanley's book. Sorry, this is just the Film Nerd podcast today. I'll hold it up on camera. Shane Stanley, independent filmmaker. What they don't teach you in film school. It's a very like conversational style of writing. I was getting such anxiety from reading it, because he talks about all the demands on you when you're making an independent film, the financial stuff, the contracts, dealing with SAG and locations, and all kind of insurance, distributors. It never ended, and I have some familiarity with all that. I've never produced an independent film, but I mean, like, just from what I've studied, generally speaking, and stories I've heard, and working on independent film sets, my stomach was in knots, just thinking like, oh my goodness, if I ever try and make a movie, the world's going to be against me. It's so hard. Not only that, afterwards, I swear I was like, I was having anxiety, bad anxiety for like 2 hours after I read the book until I went to sleep, and I was so upset. The stories are just horrifying, of things going wrong on a film set, or difficulties with locations, with crew, with actors, with contracts. Yeah, it all can go bad with everything, with the weather, with financing. Oh, I didn't even get to that part. Financing, post-production, marketing. So all those things, it was just horrifying, but you know, it's good. It's like you got to learn all that, and I really should be, you know, working towards that. So I read that, and that was a good experience, even though I was in such anxiety afterwards. I was literally like almost on the verge of tears at the end of reading it. It was so painful to read. And now I'm finally starting to get through. I only got through these pages here. This one. What's it say? Independent feature film production. A complete guide from concept through distribution. And it's got a blurb from Ridley Scott on the back. David Lynch. David Putnam, producer on Chariots of Fire. Ooh, Midnight Express. That's a good one. Killing Fields? Wow, that's a great one. Memphis Belle? Haven't seen that. John Carpenter and a few other publications. So I'm just trying to absorb all this information while the absorbing's good, and be healthy and work hard. It's weird. It's just the last few weeks are just like a dream, and not always like meaning just a dream I aspire to, like a dream like it's all just kind of fuzzy. I can't believe this is happening. You know, but things are going pretty well overall, and just trying to stay focused. And you know, the intuitive writing that I'm doing, the exercise, it's helping me with a lot of things, just to understand, don't dread certain things, because that dreading and perfectionism, and it's going to stop you from doing things, and especially with writing. And Jim Uhls was saying in one interview he did how he refuses to deal with writer's block. He'll just write gibberish if he has to. I'm like, that's what I was doing at the start of my intuitive training that I did for 6 weeks. It wasn't pure gibberish, but the sentences, like I had characters saying to each other, because I just wanted to write as fast as humanly possible. And I had to sort of, it almost like broke my brain to write, because I'm like, oh, I can't go back and correct the spelling or anything. It was just utter nonsense they were saying. Like, it was as if a random sentence generator or word generator was creating sentences for the first few days at least, just to sort of get me out of, you know, the conceptual, or as Jim Uhls calls it, analytical side of writing, where I'm judging things and it's got to be interesting, and just write with, you know, with sort of my intuition or whatever I feel, basically. And then it developed into, you know, actual dialogue and sensible scenes, and then I wrote whole screenplays that way, and I want to write more of them as an exercise. But anyways, any homework I get, I try and do it like 10 times more of it than we're assigned, or that, you know, as much as I can, just to get all the benefit of the assignment out of it, and keep pushing myself and thinking, well, why am I stopping here? Is it because I've got it, or is it because, like, I'm just, you know, it's difficult for me? If it's difficult for me, I should keep going. I have to keep going. If it gets to a point where I'm like, oh, I kind of get this, okay, then I can stop. Anyways, but I was a little distracted procrastinating today. So been busy. My mom's doing well. Been talking to her. She didn't get lost. She was telling me today, she's like, she called me walking home today. She's like, oh, okay, I'm walking by this street. I'm walking by this place. I'm not lost. She talked to Moist Andy, was leaving me funny messages, or sending me funny messages, saying how he's going to memorize all the streets in Arlington. And I told that to my mom. She's like, oh, shit, come on. So anyways, that was funny. And she's like, you don't need to tell Moist Andy where I am. I know where I am. Or Moist Andy to get me. She's like, I know where I am now. So anyways, we're still talking about, you know, her visiting here in December and filming then. Now I'm tired and hungry, and it's time to go to sleep. So thanks for watching. Stay updated for more important film updates.